Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of What's Your Next? Today, we're talking about the topic that no one wants to talk about. And that topic is insurance. Ew, insurance. But by the end of today's session, you might actually be excited about this topic because as an aspiring business owner, you're going to have insurance. So my guest today is Nicolas, aka Nico Lares, who is with Fortitude Insurance Solutions.
Welcome to What's Your Next? This is the go-to podcast for aspiring business owners who want to get to the next level, escape the rat race, and give their middle finger to the corporate 9-to-5. If you want financial freedom, work-life balance, and the business of your dreams, you're in the right place. Dave and Stacy Riska, husband-wife franchising duo, openly share their successes, failures, and lessons learned in franchising, business ownership, and working with your spouse.
And he's a real expert on this topic. So, Nico, welcome to the show.
Hey, Stacy, appreciate you having me on.
Excellent. I am so thrilled you're here because this is a topic that my audience needs to know about. If you're going to be investing in a franchise, opening up a business, you got to have insurance. But let's start from the basics because I'm kind of curious about your backstory. Let's face it, nobody wakes up and says, when I grow up, I want to be an insurance advisor. So what's the 2-minute backstory? How did you come into this life?
Yeah, so the running joke in insurance is nobody ends up in it as their primary goal or objective. We tend to either stumble upon it by accident or there's some type of family tie that either, someone in the family has an agency and once you graduate from college or you need a job, a summer internship, you kind of just find your way into it. Mine was the former story. I kind of stumbled into it, or I guess a combination of the two. So during COVID, I just recently graduated from Florida International University in December of 2019. I got hired by a company that was a IT software provider in Miami in March of 2020. 2 weeks into it, the world sort of shut down right as I finished my training and going through the hiring and onboarding process with the company. And I found myself furloughed 3 months later. So I was fresh out of graduating from college, got my first job, got furloughed from my first job within 1 quarter of being hired from it. So I was sitting around thinking, what am I going to do now that this is going on? What can I, build a career in? A buddy of mine that I was best friends with essentially since 3rd grade, his family, longtime insurance family. They are 3rd generation insurance agents going back to their great grandfather. So they've got quite a good resume and history in terms of different applications and, opportunities in the insurance space. So he said, hey, I'm working with my cousin. We've got a great opportunity. We could probably use somebody like you who's very lively and energetic and bring some spice to our agency. So ended up getting my license in July 2020, a month later, and haven't turned back since. It's been a great time the past 3.5, almost 4 years that I've been in the space, and can't wait to continue to see, where our agency and where our team continues to grow from here. And, people say once you get into insurance, you typically don't leave and you stay and build a career in it. I'd like to think that I'm, at least for now, definitely going to be continuing on that path as well from my position. So that's kind of how I got into it, just stumbled. The reason why we had an opportunity at the agency was because their main focus and niche was in the Amazon delivery service provider space. So obviously, since the world was shut down, people still needed stuff. Online e-commerce obviously blew up, and with that, last mile delivery and fulfillment did with it. So all of our clients were busier than ever during COVID. So I kind of jumped into sort of a fire hydrant of demand where people were needing the insurance policies we were offering. We were working with a global carrier who wanted to jump in this space, and they actually picked our agency and another agency in Florida as well to roll out their product and service across the country to this exact market. So it was kind of, striking or finding lightning in a bottle. and we ended up turning it, and now we're one of the, I mean, not one of the largest insurance agencies, but for a smaller, mom and pop agency, we're doing really well for ourselves. So it's been a lot of fun seeing the growth and progress that we've been on board with this exact market that we're kind of insuring.
Well, kudos to you, because it's funny how things just kind of transpire. You were in this ugly space dealing with COVID and layoffs and furloughs and all these things happening. And you end up somewhere where you can, as my wall says, do what you love what you do. And it's clear you're very passionate about the help and the services that you're providing to business owners. So let's talk about the topic that nobody wants to talk about, insurance. You know, what is business insurance, and why does a business owner really need to pay particular attention and make this a priority as they're ramping their business up?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess at the heart of insurance, the main aspect of what it does is essentially transfers risk from one person or entity to another. So the big thing about insurance and why it's important, everybody knows the horror stories of, personal injury attorneys or people retiring off of spilling a hot cup of coffee at a McDonald's drive-through, and finding their way to financial freedom through that. That's a big driver essentially for me and what I'm kind of doing on my day-to-day and helping people avoid. The biggest thing in terms of obviously in the mobile and last mile delivery space is there's a combination of risks that your business is exposed to just on your daily operations and what most of these types of businesses do. So where I come in and I help a lot of businesses walk through and understand what those risks are, and then obviously offer potential solutions and products to help them transfer that risk from them personally or their business entity for being liable to an insurance company who's there to help also mitigate risk and offer best practices and safety procedures to ensure that we minimize the potential risk and the probability of things going wrong. Obviously, insurance has a bad rap to everybody who's not in the industry. We like to say it's kind of like the eighth hidden wonder of the world because it's not taught in schools, a lot like financial literacy, but it's just as important in terms of being able to economically survive downturns or bad luck or whatever you have it. So it's really important and vital that obviously everybody has insurance that's operating a business, because it could be the one thing that keeps your business open and surviving. God forbid something were to go wrong or happen that you weren't expecting.
You are absolutely right. And I'm a testament to it, because for those of you who are not aware, I myself own a franchise. I've owned a Hawaiian themed coffee smoothie franchise for 18 years. And as part of owning that, yes, I had to have all the different types of insurance that Nico represents. So I had to have business auto, workers' comp, and general liability. And I have had to make claims. And those claims in auto and general liability have saved my business, because things like business interruption. We had a situation in my area a few years ago where power was out for 7 days. All my smoothie mix went bad, and all of my equipment got ruined. It was like a tornado had come through. And so because of having good business, general liability, the next day they had written me a check. So I'm a testament to the value of having good business insurance. So let's break it down for our audience, because most people watching and listening, this is a new concept to them. They are in the process of thinking about investing in a franchise, and they're so focused on the concept, they haven't probably thought yet about insurance. So in general, I think there's 3 types they should focus on, right? Business auto, workers' compensation, and general liability. Would that be correct?
Yep, that's definitely the 3 main ones you definitely need before you even start running a business and getting any vans or vehicles out on the road.
Okay, so let's break each of them down and get Nico's expert advice here. So business auto,
Sure.
People are familiar with personal auto. They go online, they do these quotes online. How does business auto differ from personal auto?
So the main, I guess, driver and difference between business and personal auto, obviously, as a business that's operating the van or the vehicle, for the franchise, there's going to be some form of name or logo or business concept that indicates this is not somebody's personal vehicle. This is a business vehicle that's operating a service or offering a product for the general public. So that's the first, obviously, differentiating factor between people knowing this isn't somebody's actual personal vehicle and this is actually being used to offer a product and service. The second you cross the line between I'm just driving to and from work to I'm driving this vehicle because I am earning a profit or generating revenue off of it dictates the line between personal and business auto vehicles. The main coverage in terms of business auto and what's being covered is one is obviously the vehicle itself. So if you get into an accident, fender bender, you got to replace the front bumper, your insurance will come in and cover the cost to fix your car and get it back to running in terms of what it was before the accident. There's also a business liability portion on the auto, where if you, in that fender bender, run into somebody else, there is a separate coverage that protects you from any liability from a third party who would try to come after you and sue you for damages you caused to them. That's obviously fixing their vehicle, or God forbid somebody gets hurt, needs to go to the hospital, gets an ambulance ride. It'll also cover things like that. So that way you won't have to come out of pocket and pay for anybody's injuries or potential lawsuits if it's really bad and gnarly that they may try and come after you for. So those are the main things in terms of business auto and what you're covered for.
Okay. So when you're talking to somebody, a business owner, about their business auto insurance needs, are you working with multiple carriers to help them find the best coverage that suits their needs? Or is it like, well, I just want the lowest price? How do you help a business owner find the best policy?
So a lot of times it's, the kosher answer is it depends, obviously. Depending on the type of business operation and what you're running, there are a lot of insurance companies and carriers who set up specific niche products for certain industries. So obviously we all know the big name carriers, Progressive, the Allstates of the world. They have commercial auto policies or lines that you can write or insure your business through them to protect your vehicle. But a lot of times carriers, once they are aware of a type of franchise or specific business operation, for example, mobile tire repair, there are specific carriers who specialize in that niche and that exact type of industry, where usually they'll offer more competitive pricing. But more than just the price, they understand how your business works and what types of risk exposures you guys have. So if something happens and you have to file a claim, you don't have to sit around and figure out what do I do next. Your carrier's there to help you and walk you through the process. A lot of times, the general carriers that we like to refer them as, the Allstates and Progressives, yes, they have people who can help you and walk you through how to get your business back up and running or deal with any claims as they happen. But having somebody who is an expert in that exact industry, it's almost more so reassuring. They also have the right network and the qualifications in place to make sure you're getting the right service and tending to your exact business needs, rather than just somebody who says, hey, yeah, I'll get your car fixed, but in terms of how this impacts your business, I'm not entirely sure, because they're typically not working with other, mobile repair tire businesses. And it's just, hey, we just fix people's cars, so to speak.
Okay. So a lot to think about on the business auto side, which is why it's great to work with someone like you. Let's transition into workers' compensation. A lot of people don't really know what that is, what it means. Talk about what is workers' comp and why would a business need to have this type of insurance?
Yep. So workers' comp is the second major line of coverage for, any type of business or mobile franchise opportunity that's operating vehicles. The workers' compensation is actually going to cover your employees and your hired workers that you employ for the business. Anytime a worker may get hurt while working for you on the job, instead of you coming out and paying for if they trip and fall, getting out of the van and spraying their ankle, typically it involves doctor's visits, follow-ups and check-ins, maybe an MRI or an X-ray to see what's going on with them. Workers' compensation helps them, or helps you as a business owner, cover those costs. And if the event that the employee gets hurt on the job and is not able to continue working, there's also a type of what's called indemnity coverage, where you as the business owner are responsible for continuing to pay their wage if they are hurt but cannot continue to perform their job. Because if they get hurt while working for you and they can't go and work for anybody else, that means that you are technically responsible for their wage, because now they can no longer work and earn a living. So workers' compensation does cover both of those things. It covers the injuries to your workers themselves. There's always what we consider the body itself. You need stitches, you need band-aids, you need a cast to fix your broken arm, etc. Those are one type of claim, or what we call coverages. And the other coverage would be paying for their actual wages, which is where the compensation comes into play. So a lot of times we hear sometimes horror stories where, obviously, being on the road, there is the risk of a worker eventually ending up in a fatal accident. Those types of accidents do occur, especially when you see those, big 18-wheeler accidents where it's a 10-car pileup, big 18-wheelers coming down a slope. It snowed the night before, and that 18-wheeler piles into 10 vehicles. Obviously, if the business is, the trucking company that happened to, usually those are pretty gnarly, and your workers' compensation is there in case that driver gets hurt. They'll pay for their wages and their medical bills to get caught back up to speed. And unfortunately, sometimes, yes, if they do ending up in a fatality and passing away, the workers' comp carrier will also then come in and pay a death benefit to the driver's worker and their family. God forbid something like that were to happen. So that way you're not on the hook and being sued by the driver's family and saying, he was employed by you, you guys could have taken some safety measures or not put him on the road. And instead of ending up in a lawsuit, you're going to be covered, and ensuring that everybody ends up getting what they need and mostly deserve. It's tough because a lot of times, the news and media puts out there all these what we call ballistic or nuclear verdicts, where somebody gets paid $50-60 million because they hired Morgan and Morgan to come in and represent them, because our client felt like they weren't getting the need or representation they deserved. A lot of times that happens because people don't know what to do in these situations. And 90% of the time, a lawyer gets involved in a claim because of an insurance incident, that something happens. It's not because they didn't have insurance or people are trying to take advantage of the situation. Mostly it's because there's a lack of communication. People feel like they're not getting the attention or they need that they deserve after something just happened and their life falls apart. So they go out and they hire an attorney to represent them because they need to get their life back together. And that's a big role in terms of what we play in our agency, where because we're involved with you and the insurance carrier, we can walk you through the ins and outs of that process and how it can impact your business. And if you don't know how to respond to something, we can always be that ear and that mouth for you behind the scenes. So you can make sure people know exactly what to expect, because the second you stop communicating because you don't know what to say or how this process works, it can end up turning into something bad that nobody wants to get into. So those are the kind of benefits in terms of working with a broker such as myself. Outside of going and finding different coverage options, yes, we can find you quotes from Progressive, Allstate, or specific carrier in your niche. But honestly, we see that the biggest value in terms of working with a broker such as myself and our agency is that added factor where we can actually hold your hand through the process. And when everything starts to fall apart and you don't know what tomorrow's going to look like, you have somebody there who's been there before and can give you that kind of confidence. So you can honestly go to sleep at night feeling okay that you're not going to maybe run out of business or have to shut down your business tomorrow. And now you're not going to be able to pay your employees or still be a part of your community, as you've been used to.
Absolutely. And especially in the beginning, somebody who's new coming into business, this is their first time, let's say, opening a business, buying a franchise, whatever it is, they've got 800 other things on their to-do list. And yes, they know they need to get insurance, but they don't know what questions to ask. And I can see how you stepping in and being a great partner to them is so instrumental in just helping them quickly ramp up. So I'm curious to know, on the workers' comp side, is this a type of insurance that is mandatory in every state? Because I've heard some that you don't have to have it, but I know where I am, it's required.
So it's mostly required in all 50 states. There are certain limitations depending on how many employees you have or what your total payroll is, whether you need it or not. And that varies by state. I think the average is if you have more than 4 or 5 employees, and you're operating under a certain payroll figure, you don't have to have, or if you're below 4 or 5 employees, you don't have to have it. But if you have more than 4 or 5 in certain states, typically you do have to have workers' comp coverage. But no, it is not necessary. And if you're operating as a sole owner or owner operator, and it's just you yourself, there's no real risk in terms of, hey, I'm not going to come after and sue myself if I get hurt. Usually there's, health insurance or some type of medical insurance in place, for fixing yourself or your own injuries. And there's also disability insurance where if you're worried about, hey, now I won't have an income and I want to make sure that I'd still be able to have my wages come in, because a lot of times these solopreneurs or sole owner operators, a lot of times if you don't pay yourself a salary, technically what your business earns, or if it's a commission-based sort of payout, a lot of times a disability insurance policy is the right objective, because most workers' compensation and employers only pay salary wages. They don't actually pay bonuses or stock contributions that are paid out to you as an owner. So there are a couple of different other options depending on what your payroll looks like or how you pay yourself from the business that we could also explore and ensure if something happens that you're not losing your income overnight from an injury.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this. Let's transition into the third type, which is general liability. Nico, that sounds very general. What is general liability and what does that cover?
Well, yeah, general liability, as it states, it's there to essentially protect you from any liability or damages that you will cause to the general public. Oftentimes, obviously, people have business auto, so that's really only involved when a vehicle is the cause or the root cause of the damage. The workers' comp, yes, will cover your driver, but in the event something happens where your business is operating outside of the vehicle, a lot of times we use the example or the reference if somebody comes to visit you at your shop, or if you set up in a parking lot and somebody comes to buy something from you. If they slip and fall because you set up some tables and chairs or fall over and hurt themselves, you didn't hit them with your car, so your business auto is not going to cover their injury. They don't work for you, so your workers' comp is not going to cover their injury. So you need that general liability policy in place for that third bucket, where that was essentially your last piece of exposure, where anything that could happen with the general public interacting with your business, you would still be covered from any potential suits or damages that occur while they're interacting with your business.
And what kinds of coverages would fall under this? Because I'm thinking, well, a business has computers, and what if your computers all burn up? Or it could be literally the building catching on fire, or it could be, as you said, somebody slipping and falling. Like, does it cover all of that, or are these special additional add-ons to the policy?
Most general liability policies have those included as add-ons. There are sometimes, it mostly depends on, again, the type of nature of the business, where if you need to have special line items for a certain type of service that you offer or provide, usually like if it's perishable, it'll have one type of class that you have to have added to the general liability. Or if it's something in terms of you're going out and performing a service on somebody's property where you have to bring on tools, and there's some level of a construction aspect where you're working on something and God forbid it falls apart and breaks. It's called a products completed operations liability. Usually that's included in a lot of business general liability policies. But it really depends. You definitely have to have a conversation. And I think it would definitely take more than just a single interview to kind of walk through all that.
Right, no doubt.
But yeah, the general liability is a pretty wide, what we call umbrella, in terms of being able to cover most of the risks that your business would face when it comes to interacting with the general public or third parties.
Excellent. All right. So now we have a general understanding of the 3 types of business insurance, especially those that you can provide a solution for. So if somebody now, they're about to invest in a business, they understand the importance of insurance, what should they be looking for as they're going out to search for an insurance solution? Should they work with a broker? Like, what is the benefit of working with someone like you versus trying to go out and do it themselves?
Well, I'd definitely say the first step in terms of looking for a broker would always try and see if there's somebody who specializes in the type of business that you're going to be opening up or starting. A lot of times they do have, better rates or have pre-negotiated prices with some carriers when starting out. The cost obviously is a big factor. So I would definitely recommend to try and shop as many avenues as you can, like you would with anything else. I always recommend at least get 3 insurance quotes before you make your final decision. So if you can find multiple avenues, or if it's a traditional Allstate and Progressive are 2 options, and then you go to find an independent broker as your third, that's usually a good combination in terms of what we see businesses seeing in the beginning. And then in terms of what else to look for, obviously the biggest thing is just some type of experience or expertise. If they have or already work with businesses such as yours, that's a huge factor, because obviously starting out as a new business, you don't know what your risks look like.
Mhm.
And the worst thing is when you actually have to file a claim and something bad happens, and you yourself and the person who you bought insurance with have no idea what to do next. Because again, 90% of claims end up with an attorney involved because people don't feel like they're getting the service or the adequate representation that they need to have their problem solved. So I would at least just recommend, speaking with somebody before you sign the policy and get coverage bound, to ensure that the person who's helping you find that coverage actually has gone through a claim and they're not learning how to solve claims on your policy or your business for the first time, because that just increases the likelihood or the probability that you'll end up getting an attorney involved. And that's typically a recipe for disaster once that happens.
Right. So a lot of the
Mhm.
people that I work with, as I mentioned, aspiring franchise owners, but they're coming in many times with an empire builder mentality. They're buying 2, 3, 4 territories at a time. So as a business grows and scales, what should they be thinking about related to their insurance? Do they need to up the ante and make sure they're adequately covered? What should a business owner think about as they're growing and scaling as it relates to their insurance?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say, most of the time, in terms of the scaling, insurance premiums are usually written off of some type of either revenue figure or some percentage based rating system, where as you grow, your costs would essentially grow in the same proportion. The only time in terms of really expanding where things will change is if you go across state lines, where costs will kind of differentiate. So if you're operating in Florida, or you have a business franchise in Florida, now you want to expand into Georgia and Alabama and work your way north and expand into the US, there would be some differentiations in the premium and the costs, what are associated while transitioning. But if you're expanding and you're still keeping things to a very general geographic area, I guess would be the differentiating factor that most people would have to be aware of. That's when you can kind of expect for things to get a bit more complicated. But as long as you're operating on a per state basis, typically things remain very similar in terms of costs, risks that you're exposed to, and anything that would really impact your insurance.
Wow. So much to know. Thank goodness you're an expert in this area. I know my audience is going to want to reach out to you to learn more about their insurance needs and ensuring, pun intended, right? They are adequately insured. So how can people reach out to you? How can they connect?
Yeah, so they can either, email me or give me a call whenever. My email address is nicolas@fortsure.com. It's Nicolas without an H, so Nicolas at Fortsure, FORTSURE.com. And my direct line here is 954-324-3112. Obviously, first thing would just give me a call, let me know exactly what it is you're looking into or what type of business you're starting, and then we can kind of work our way from there to see exactly what coverages you would need or what mostly risks you'd be exposed to, so we can kind of take some risk off the table.
Great. Nicolas, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your expertise with my viewers and my listeners. It's very apparent you know your stuff, and you really seem to be engaged and excited about helping aspiring business owners. But I'm curious to know, because this podcast is called What's Your Next? What is your next?
What is my next? Well, I don't know. I'm really enjoying, I guess, currently, what I do on a day to day, and it's definitely a lot of fun. But in terms of what's my next, obviously just kind of try to continue on the path that I'm doing. And I know a lot of times, I guess, what's your next would indicate some type of change or something different. But I think I'm just going to try and keep getting better and better every day in terms of what I'm doing. And my next move is just always to try and improve on what I did yesterday or the day before. So I always like to kind of keep that as my next idea or goal or objective. Just how can I keep getting better at what I do?
Sharpen the saw. Love it. What's your next doesn't literally have to be a change, right? It can just be optimizing, maximizing, as long as you're happy doing what you love and loving what you do. And it's apparent that you are checking the boxes in that regard. So thank you, Nicolas. Thanks for joining my audience today. Thank you for being here with us. If you got value from today's session, please like and leave us a comment below. We'll also make sure that Nicolas's information is shared in the description. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on What's Your Next. See you next time. Bye-bye.